in our first meeting, I'm not sure if I'm audible or not. I'm not sure if I am audible or not.
You are
audible.
You are audible,
audible.
Chair. You are audible.
Yes.
See myself. I don't know. Cindy, am I on the? I only see the agenda. Responding. I'm getting frustrated.
Okay, I can see you on the screen and the agenda is on. Can you see the agenda?
Oh, okay, I can see myself. All right.
Yes.
All right. Okay. No, you're welcome, comrade, honorable members. Let's try to move as quick as possible. We meet today after the State of the Nation address and the budget. There are a few things that have been referred to us. I think this meeting partly will then be able to deal with that. I want to also make a special welcome to our new researcher. I've seen that we've been allocated a new researcher. Not sure about the name. I'll find the name now. The executive authorities, Cindy did indicate that they are not present in this meeting. Members, you are welcome, and we're looking forward to a fruitful 2023. I think we ended the year quite very well. Last year, there was quite significant progress in the restoration of Parliament. And we made today one of the agenda items is the restoration of Parliament, which shows that even during recess, work was done. So we appreciate that. Honorable members, I think we should start and acknowledge the following apologies. Member Mahlangu, co-chairperson, she's unable to join due to bereavement in her family. Mr. Khai, due to ill health, and Mr. Singh is attending other parliamentary business. I'm not sure if these are the only apologies that we have, Cindy.
Yes, Chairperson, those are the only ones I've received.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other apologies that we should note from members? None. Then I think then we should start. There is the agenda on the screen. Also, welcome the departments present here. And without any waste of time, Cindy, just go through the agenda. I just can't find it here, and it's very small on my screen. Okay. Yeah, I think the first agenda item is presentation on the role and the mandate of the Joint Standing Committee. That's the first agenda item. Let's move it up a bit, Cindy.
Okay.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I think we're going to have a long meeting. As said, the first agenda item is presentation on the role and mandate of the Joint Standing Committee, followed by discussions. Then the second agenda item will be recommendations to be pursued in 2023, implementation of the parliament-related issues, including the Zondo recommendations. And the third item will be consideration and adoption of the committee report on the Parliament's revised 2020-2022-2023 and 2020-2023-2024 annual performance plans and budgets, and report of the Joint Standing Committee on Parliament's performance in the first half of 2022-2023. Then the last item will be consideration of committee minutes. As indicated, we do not have a quorum, and an agenda that requires a quorum is agenda item number 4 and agenda number 5. Because they are there already, I will still pursue members that we go through them, and at an opportune time, when we have a required quorum, then we can just log in just for adoption, so that the reports can be tabled in the House. Okay. I will now invite the committee researcher to then take us through, to first maybe introduce himself. We appreciate, we've seen some work that he has done, some advanced work that he has done for the committee. You're welcome. And the platform is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, honorable members. Chairperson, I just want to correct you when you said we have been allocated a new researcher. I've been here for a long time with you, Chairperson. I'm not a new researcher.
Oh, my humble apologies. I'm confusing you with the study group researcher. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, we've been allocated a new researcher in the study group. My humble apologies.
Okay.
But just for record, just introduce yourself, because we have new members in the committee. Yes.
We sell Samuel. So I've been a researcher for the committee since the 5th Parliament. So to date. So today we are presenting on the plans of the committee in terms of the strategic plan. But when we deliberated and discussed it, and then we said it should not be the strat plan, because now we are towards the end of the term. We only left with 12 months towards the end of this term. So we said, but the committee should do something in terms of planning, so that the legacy report can reflect at least tangible issues in it when is presented at the end of the term. So today we are presenting for the annual planning from March till March next year. So which means it's only 12 months left for this committee to deal with all the issues that we're going to talk about today. So the first slide, it just shows the outline of the presentation. Then Cindy, can we move to the second slide?
Oh my goodness. Boy, I'm having difficulty moving the slide. Let me just quickly. Apologies. I'm going to stop sharing here. I just want to make sure. Boy, I think you may have to share it on your side, because my laptop is freezing now again. I have given you sharing rights.
How to
So Mbui, and in the middle of your screen at the bottom, there will be a button that says share screen with an arrow pointing upwards. Can you see that button? Or that tab? This one. So you can click on that, then it will allow you to go to your folders and find your document, and then you can share it from there. I can see your screen, boy.
Yes. Yes. And then the second slide, and then we move to that slide. That slide, it gives us of the oversight. It gives us the important. I don't think I have to read it because it outlines.
I'm struggling to hear you, Dolly.
Yeah.
Bui,
can't-
Bui, I'm struggling to hear you.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm the only one.
On my side too, Chair.
Yes. Oh,
You are fading.
so can you hear me now, Chair?
Please try again. Now you've completely disappeared.
What?
Find a better spot, please.
What could be? Yes. How is it now? Am I
think it's
audible
still-
now?
You're still fading away in Shan.
Yeah. So I said,
Bui, if you have headsets, please try to use them.
I don't.
Or you'll have to change the gadget that you are using.
I use the laptop because the laptop is the best one to.
Yeah, you are better now. Fine now.
Oh, is it better now?
Yeah, fine. Just keep
Yes.
it that way. Thank you.
Okay.
Let's start from the beginning.
Okay. Yes, Chair. I was saying that the first slide is just the outline of the presentation, then we'll skip it. And the second slide is the same. Now the third slide, it gives the background, but this background, it focuses only on the oversight. It gives the importance of the oversight. I think I don't have to read those bullet points because they are just straightforward the way we are presented. And then we come to the fourth slide. The fourth slide where it says the unique features of the committee versus the POA. This POA is the Parliamentary Oversight Authority. It was the committee that was conducting oversight of Parliament before this committee was established. And then why I present it here and compared it to this committee, it's because when I looked at it, I found that this committee, the POA, had more powers, had more ways of dealing with oversight than the committee that we have today. which means now it points out to the weakness of the systemic issues in our committee. Because if you look at the first two bullet points, it gives the mandate of this current committee now. It says the mandate of the JSCFMP is to maintain oversight over the financial management of Parliament and considering instruction issued by the executive authority, and consider the annual report tabled and referred by the Speaker to the committee. And then the second bullet point further says, the committee is also responsible for performing any other function specified in the fund, in this act. So. Sorry, members. Okay. When you come to Parliamentary Oversight Authority, the committee that was conducting oversight before the establishment of this committee, the mandate of the Parliamentary Oversight Authority was to put in place. Cindy, there's something that is hiding my presentation here. So I can't see it because the slide is cut on my side.
Is it
the screen of?
Okay, Mbui.
How do you move it?
Let me just quickly. Is it better now?
No, it's still there on the side.
Okay, so what you need to do,
There's no way to minimize it.
Yes, so what you need to do, go all the way up, hold your cursor over the top part, and then you click on the left-hand side. There's a minimize tab.
The one that has. Okay.
It will take away the bubbles, the list of participants.
No. I got lost.
I've sent you a photo of it.
Okay. Oh, Cindy, I'm lost now. Even though the document left the screen.
Okay. Apologies, members. Shall I try to share it again, Bui?
Okay.
On my side, and then we see what happens. Perhaps mine will do a better job now.
Because it gives me problems. Can you
Okay,
share it on your side?
I'm going to try again. So we were on slide number 4. Share. Okay. Stop sharing. I'm going to leave it like this.
Okay, can you move it now? Move to the fourth slide. Okay, yeah, this slide, yes. Yes.
Yeah, except it's still not gonna.
No, it's fine now. I can see
got it.
Yes. Then members, let me repeat on this slide. It says the unique features of the committee versus the POA features. And then this is the mandate of the committee, the current committee. The mandate of the committee is to maintain oversight of the financial management of Parliament, considering instructions issued by the executive authority, and consider annual reports tabled and referred by the Speaker to the committee. It further says that the committee is also responsible for performing any other functions specified in the FMPPLA or by the rules of Parliament or consistent with the objective of the Act. And then these two first bullet points, these are the mandate of the current committee. And then now, before this committee, there was a committee that was the oversight mechanism to conduct oversight over Parliament. The mandate of that committee was to put in place an appropriate system of governance by which Parliament is managed and controlled in support and furtherance of its strategies and policies to ensure an effective and efficient parliament. And it further says the POA, which means the previous committee, was also responsible for interpreting and overseeing implementation of policies formulated by parliament administration and determined the actual level of service and overseeing the parliamentary services through report by secretary to parliament. And the third bullet point for the functions of this committee, the mandate, the POA was established by the rules. Its establishment is prescribed in the joint rules of parliament. It is the joint rules because it was also including NA and NCOP. The POA function was responsible for all governance matters, such as directing, planning, determining resources requirements, as well as reporting on operations. So members, I highlighted in this slide these differences between the previous committee and the current committee to show that this committee, when it was established, although it is established by the Act, is the standing committee, is the committee that has been established by the Act, and its powers are bestowed by the Act to it. But it seems as if this committee now has diminished powers than the previous committee. For example, if you can notice now, when Parliament banned, the committee was struggling to see what it can do to deal with the oversight over the banning of Parliament. The role of the committee was not clear as to what it should do. The only thing that was happening throughout after Parliament banned is that Parliament management and the speakers, even the public, used to come to the committee just to present. And then the committee had nothing to do in order to show and to help also Parliament to come to the solution of the issues after the banning of Parliament. This is because why that the committee has diminished powers compared to the previous committee. If, for example, it was the POA, the previous committee, it would have much way to deal with the banning of Parliament. If you look at its mandate and function, then it shows that it would have something tangible that it could do in order to deal with the banning of Parliament. But our committee currently, it didn't have a clear role as to what it should do, because if you look at its mandate also, it says specifically the Parliament is conducting oversight over financial management of Parliament and considering the issues issued by the executive authority. That's just that specific according to the Act. But when you look at the POA, you see that there's a lot, and some of the issues there, they are management issues that that committee was dealing with. And then our committee, the Act is so silent when it comes to the policy oversight, then which means we only focus on the financial management and issues that, and instructions that are issued by the executive authority. So then I wanted to highlight this, members, because if the committee has got systemic weaknesses, then it will impact on the oversight, on the outcome of the oversight. We might not have effective oversight. As we have seen now after the banning of Parliament, the role of the committee was not really clear. Till today, the committee does not have a tangible thing or recommendation that it could put forward in terms of banning of Parliament. So Cindy, can we move to the next slide now? Hello, Cindy.
Yes, Mbui, can you see the next slide? Key issues on committee operation. Mhm.
I can't see it, Cindy. I'm still on the sixth slide that I was doing. Okay, now I can see it. No, go
Okay.
back, Cindy. Yes, I can see it now. Now the next slide is the key issues on committee operation. Now it says the lack of regulations of financial management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act of 2009. Regulations are important tool to hold the executive accountable. Now we still have the problem with the Act also. The Act has been implemented since 2009. Till today, the only regulations that we have, they are on procurement when it comes to Parliament. Then the regulations that we have, they're on procurement. When it comes to budget processes, we don't have any regulation. Now, the problem is when you depend on the Act, on the provision of the Act is so rigid. Even the management will find it difficult to deal with the Act only without the regulations. The committee, the Parliament is still lacking the regulation. The Act of Parliament now on financial management, it still lacks the regulation, which means in the absence of the regulations, even the committee will find it difficult to hold the Parliament administration accountable, because regulations will specify and give clear guidance as to how the management can deal with issues and planning and management of the institution. But in the absence of the regulation, that is just relying on the Act, and then it will make it difficult even for the committee to hold the management accountable, because there will be nothing that will always refer to it that is in detail, because the Act will just give provision, but the regulations will outline those provisions as to how they can deal with. So that's the problem also. And I understand now that we deal with the regulations. The one committee, that is the Standing Committee on Finance, is dealing with the regulation of this Act. But now I'm so wondering also that how come that the regulations, the process of the regulations are dealt with the Standing Committee on Finance, while there's this committee existing now. And you can imagine now, because we've been always highlighting, even the committee recommending on the lack of the regulation ever since it was established. But now when the regulations have to be processed, they are taken out to another committee that didn't have clue of the issues that we're dealing with in order to come up with the regulation. So this is, for me, surprising also. If, for example, they would say, no, it's because the Standing Committee on Finance, it's because it has the powers from the money bill. And then why can't this committee be bestowed powers that are enshrined in the money bill? And then so that it can deal also with the process of the regulation. Now, currently, we've been waiting for a long time, maybe more than a year now, waiting for the process of the regulation. But there's still a draft today, they are not approved, that contain the budget processes and all that. So now, without the regulations, especially referring to the budget process, even although the committee, the Act highlight that this executive authority of Parliament, when it comes to the budget, then they have to consult the Minister of Finance. But if there is no clear guidance or there is no clear budget process, then it will be difficult also to deal with the Minister of Finance, because, for example, now the executive committee would go to the Minister of Finance, but not following the clear guidance. And then the Minister of Finance on the other side, the executive, they have clear guidance when it comes to budget processes, which means Parliament will have to submit to that budget process of the executive. Or as a result, then they will have no way to convince the Minister of Finance without their own processes, because maybe they would also go there not having a plan as to how to negotiate for more money for Parliament, because now we always alarm that the Parliament is underfunded. Now the executive authority is busy with the Minister of Finance and finding ways to fund Parliament. But if there is no tangible plan, and then the Minister of Finance as the custodian of the public purse, it won't be easy to release the money if there's no tangible plan and there's no clear budget process on our side. So it would make it difficult also. So now the last bullet point, it says, not all the key recommendations by this committee were implemented by Parliament. I think this point Cindy is going to deal with. It's so clear when in her presentation, is going to deal with this, the recommendation. Then the next slide is the objective of Parliament and committee activities. The work of Parliament is grouped into two wide streams and categories, namely core business and service administration. Yes, we understand that the core business of Parliament, we talk about plenary in both houses, NCOP and NA, and then those are key, and those are key activities in Parliament. But also there is the support services, which means those people who are ITs and other HR and other divisions in Parliament. So this Parliament constitutes these two activities, the core business and the support side. And then the parliamentary core business is conducted through plenary sessions of the NA and the NCOP. This is what we see in the House. This is the core business of Parliament, and the processing of legislation and the deliberations in the House and the reports of committees that are tabled in the House. Those are core businesses of Parliament. The Parliamentary Service Administration provides the administration and support for all mechanisms, structures in which parliamentary core business is conducted. This is the key role of the Parliamentary Support Service. It supports the core business of Parliament. That's the relationship between them. The activities of these are the core business of Parliament, which means the activities of Parliament are the core businesses of Parliament. Then can we move to the next slide, Cindy? And then the next slide is the main focus in the budget and annual report of Parliament. When you look at the blue square there in the top there, number one, blue square number one, it says scrutinize the strategic plan, budget, and annual report of Parliament. This is the role of this committee currently according to the Act. It's specifically doing that, which means it's limited to that compared to the POA. The POA had more wider role than what this committee has. Currently, this committee, that's what it's doing according to the Act. It is legislated, it's the legislated function of this committee. It scrutinizes the strategic plan, the budget, and the annual report of Parliament. And then secondly, now after it has done all that, it interrogates the accounting officer on budget, as well as the executive authority. So which means it asks some difficult question concerning to this, to the scrutiny of the strategic plan, budget, and the annual report. Then it calls the accounting officer in order to answer some questions and give clarity. So then the third one, the third square, blue square, then is the process and adoption of the report. This is what the committee do. It processes the report and come up with observations on the annual report or the strat plan, and then it gives the recommendation to the executive authority. But now the recommendations, I believe that's why it's so, there are few recommendations that are implemented by Parliament. It is because that the recommendations by nature, they are not enforceable. Recommendations is like, in a simple language, is that it's like the suggestion, you give the suggestion. Then which means Parliament or the committee itself, if Parliament does not implement its recommendation, has nothing else to do, because it depends on Parliament to implement it or not to implement, because the recommendations are not enforceable by nature. It's just the suggestion to them. I think also it is because that when it comes to the recommendation, even if you look at the executive out there, all those, the portfolio committees, they would just recommend, they will never enforce what they recommended to the executive. And then you find that the executive government does not implement the recommendation. Then the committee has nothing to do, even Parliament as a whole has nothing to do if they don't implement them. That's why you find then there are many recommendations that are not implemented, which means the accounting officers, they choose to implement or not to implement the recommendation. It's their prerogative to implement them and not to implement. But also there's a way to hold them accountable when they fail because they did not implement some of the recommendations that the committee highlighted. And that's where the committee can exercise its muscles and deal with the accounting officer. But by nature, recommendations are not enforceable. But only when the accounting officers are failing, they are underperforming, but due to the lack of implementation of the recommendations. Then that's where the committee can work and flex its masses to fight with, or not to fight in a way, because oversight is not to fight. Sometimes it's to help the management or the accounting officer to improve. Then now the fourth square, blue square, is the report to the NA, but I omitted NSOP, is to the NA and the NSOP, because this is the Joint Standing Committee. So then the committee will, after all that process of the report and all the deliberations, will come up with the observations in the report and the recommendation. And then those observations and the recommendations will be reported to the House, as we know that the chairpersons, they used to table them in the House. All the time they table the report of the committee. It's when they present them in the House to both houses, the NA and the NSOP. Then that's why it ends the process of this committee. This is the legislated process. Can we move to the next slide, Cindy? Yeah, the next slide, it gives us the key legal and institutional frameworks, stakeholders, and operational instruments. The first square there, it says key legal frameworks. The key legal frameworks is the Constitution, and Financial Management Act of Parliament, Oversight and Accountability Model, the joint rules. Then this committee works within this. Its functions are provided in these acts, in this legislation, in this framework. It doesn't do anything out of this framework. That's how the act confined it. It operates within this legal framework. It's not like the portfolio committees. The difference between this committee and the portfolio committees are not established by the act. They are just established by the rules of Parliament. So even their functions, some of their functions, they are not confined by the act. But this committee, because it's the standing committee, which is established by the act, even its functions are provided by the act. And then we use these documents, the Constitution, the Financial Management Act of Parliament, and the Oversight and Accountability Model of Parliament. Then we consider it also, although it's not the act, but the joint rules also, we look at the joint rule, which means the committee, when it functions within these frameworks, these legal frameworks. It doesn't do anything outside of these legal frameworks. That's how the act confined it. It should function within this legal framework. So now the next slide, the next square is on the side, on the right-hand side, Cindy, on top. Yes, and then the key institutional frameworks, Then these are the key institutional framework that the committee deal with. The parliamentary committees, there should be a relationship between this committee and parliamentary committees, because parliamentary committees, they operate within parliament. They might be also raise their satisfaction about the manner that they are supported. So they have to deal and communicate via this committee. They are not supposed to go straight and talk to the parliament management without this committee. If they want to relay something, they should relay through this committee. And then there's also the parliamentary budget office. We know the parliamentary budget office. Now it's not clear how does it help this committee when it comes to the parliamentary budget office. Yes, we can see its role when it comes to the Standing Committee on Finance and the Select Committee on Finance. We can see the role of the budget office. But when it comes to this committee, I don't know how it helps this committee. I don't see its role. But we flagged it there, we flagged it there so that we can see if it has the role to play or not. And then if it does not have a role, it should be clear and we remove it there as the key institutional framework. So now there's also the research unit. We know we have the researchers and all that. The committee section, we know that for this committee to function, the committee section is pushing it and it is doing all means so that it can sit, it can do everything to present the reports and all that. And then the legal section, when we have the legal issues, then we can consult the legal section to advise the committee. Communications and communications unit. In the communications unit, when maybe you want to communicate the statements and all that from the committee, you use the communications unit. The public education unit during the public hearings and all that. And then the language services for interpretation, if members need interpretation, and a public relations unit. And then the public relations unity also is part of it. So now let us go to the next square, Cindy. And then the key partners and external stakeholders. The main key partner of this committee is the Auditor General of South Africa. And then the National Treasury, the Organized Labor Nehau Parliament Branch, not all the whole of Nehau, but the Nehau Parliament Branch. Why we put the Union Organized Labor? Because the organized labor, it's like the parliamentary committees. If they have issues that will need this committee, they had to relate them to the committee. If they can't deal with the issues with the management, they can relate the issues to the committee so that the committee can deal with them with the management. But not all the issues, the HR issues, that they can always forward them to the management. But there are some issues where they will need the committee. You know that there was an incident that one of the officials in parliament shot himself. And in those issues, there are issues that Nehau raised when it comes to that incident. Yeah, and then those issues, but I cannot deliberate on them, but it's just to highlight that what is the role of the union when it comes to the committee as the external, as the key partner or external stakeholder. So now there is also the parliamentary monitoring group. The PMG is always there in the committee meetings, taking minutes and all that. It comes to our committees also, to our committee now, and then it takes minutes. It's also our key external stakeholder. So it's so very important. We should always consider, because it keeps records of the committee also, in addition to the committee section. It also keeps some records for the committee. There's also the media and the general public, also media, but not all the time media are accepted to our meetings. Sometimes the committee would choose to have a closed meeting, which means the media might not be accepted and the general public when it's the closed meeting. And then we go to the last square, where it says key operational instrument. The key operational instrument, as we have said now, is the Constitution, the NDP, the National Development Plan, SONA, which means the State of the Nation Address, Strategic Plan, Annual Performance Plan, and Budget of Parliament, Annual Report, Quarterly Reports, Monthly Financial Statements, Research Reports, Performance Reports, Committee Reports. So the committee also is entitled to receive the monthly financial statements, with which we are looking to receive that. We don't receive the monthly financial statement, although the Act also highlights that the committee should have access to those monthly financial statements. What Parliament gives us now is the quarterly report, but not the monthly financial statement. We are not receiving the monthly financial statements from Parliament, of which we are entitled to receive. The committee is entitled to receive those monthly financial statements. Then you can move to the next slide, Cindy. Yes, the next slide is the unfolding of the legislative requirements in a South African Parliament as per the Financial Management of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act. So then when you look there, I started it deliberately by the annual report, of which the annual report should be the last thing. But in the process, I started with it because when you look at the time frames there, the first thing that we receive is the annual report in September. And then when we receive the annual report in September, then the committee process it till October. By the end of October, the committee is supposed to have concluded with the annual report. According to the Act, this is the legislated time frame according to the Act. And then if the committee doesn't operate within this time frame, which means it will be not complying with the Act. So we should guide ourselves to operate within this time frame because it's the legislative time frame. And there's also the next square there is the budget and APP report to the House and joint sitting. Then the budget and the APP, the committee should deal with them in October till November. We started with the annual report in September till October. Now the budget and the APP of Parliament, then it should deal with them in October till November. By November, it should have concluded dealing with the budget and the APP. And also simultaneously, then the national budget adjustment process. So during the national budget adjustment process is in October, which means Parliament's budget also is also adjusted at that time. So it means the committee also should receive the adjusted budget so that it can review it. It's different from the budget that the minister presented in February, the one that we implement in April. Now it's the same budget, but by October, if there are additional budget needed, then the committee or the accounting officer will request for adjustment or moving or shifting of funds in that period. Is this the only period that is allowed by the Act in order to adjust the budget? And this budget process that we talk about here, mainly we follow it, taking it from the PFMA, because with Parliament, there's no clear budget process. We still use the PFMA because Parliament also, it now follows exactly the same process that the executive, so although it has its own act, but it also follows the same process when it comes to the budget processes. So which means now we need the regulations for the act in order to determine our own process. There was a reason that the Parliament has got its own Financial Management Act, different from the executive. But now we go and follow the same processes of the executive, while we have our own act because of the lack of the regulation because the regulations would outline the process, the budget process. And then now there's also the implementation. We come back now to in April. The first budget implementation is in April. In October, it's just the adjustment, but the implementation of budget, after the Minister of Finance announced it in February, and then Parliament will implement its own budget in April. Then after the implementation of budget, there's also a in-year monitoring through the quarterly reports. And then the Parliament now, according to the Act, it should receive all that as it's receiving also now, the quarterly reports, the first quarter report, second and third and fourth quarter report. Then if it doesn't receive those reports, doesn't process those reports, then which means it will not be complying with the Act because those reports are legislated. The provisions of those reports are legislated. We need to follow that exactly. We need to deal with all those reports every year, and we should consider the time frame when we deal with them. Can we move to the next slide, Cindy? Now, the last slide, it says the end, but I put the statement there that says budget is not merely about numbers and statistics. It is about the policy. As I highlighted before, the mandate of the Act, of the committee, according to the Act, it says the committee is responsible for conducting oversight over financial management of Parliament and also considering the instruction issued by the executive authority. So in this case now, I'm trying to highlight that we cannot only look at the figures and the statistics when it deals with the financial management. And then we cannot sideline the policy. Because when you receive the budget, what you fund is the policy. If you can conduct an effective oversight, you should also look at those policies that you funded as if they are effective, if they were efficient, if they were economically funded. But without having this role also to oversee the policy implementation of Parliament, it will make the committee to have an ineffective oversight. So thank you, members, for the opportunity to present. Thank you, I'm done.
Thank you very much. Indeed, budget is about policy, not just numbers. I think as we proceed, we're getting wiser. And I'm just listening to the presentation. You know, I think this committee, we've done quite fairly well. We've tried to move certain points, especially related to compliance and adherence to the FAMPLA. I think we've tried, you know, to shift some few points, though a lot still needs to be done. This is work in progress. Those who served before us, I think they just wanted to align themselves with the PFMA and ignore the fact that this committee is governed through a different legislation. But work in progress indeed, as said. I will then take hands. I don't see hands. Yes, Member Khadebe, Member Umphile Maotwe, Member Lesoma. In that order, those are the hands that we have for now. Member Khadebe, you will lead, followed by Member Umphile, then Member Lesoma will be the last.
No, thank you, Chairperson. And then first of all, I'd like to welcome the report which is presented to us. Although it is coming very late towards the end of our term. But I think what is very important on our side is to work with what we have. I'll make an example here, Chairperson, is that as the research has clearly indicated, that when coming to the issue of the oversight on the issue of the parliamentary file, we have encountered a lot of problems for us to do the job. But what is critical here, Chairperson, is that as of October, after the adjustment budget, there was 118 million which was allocated to Parliament to deal with the issues related to the parliamentary file. I think that as this committee, because what is happening is that the issue of parliamentary finance is the exclusive preserve of this committee. I think that what we must do, we must call the Secretary to Parliament that they come and account what they've done up to now about that allocation. And then again, when looking at the issue of the budget by the minister, the very same adjustment budget, an amount of 2 billion was committed to Parliament so that it can deal with this issue of Parliament. I think that the sooner the executive authority and the secretary to Parliament come to this committee, in particular account for the 118 million, what they've done up to now. I understand last year that they could not come simply because when the adjustment was done, we were about to rise as Parliament. But now they have more than enough time to have dealt with the issues and see what is the direction of the expenditure of that 180 million, because that one is exclusively on our side. And the second thing, Chairperson, I think that as the committee, since 2019, we were clamoring on the fact that one, Parliament is an arm of state. It cannot be subjected to the process of the executive, because immediately we have that situation. It means that there's an inequality now between the various arms of state. So what must happen is that we have to invite a minister of finance in particular, so that we engage him as this thing, because you can see the impediments on the side of Parliament that was subjected to scoff instead of these things being dealt by us. Because the minister can take that issue and put it straight to the parliamentary, because as you said, we have an act. When dealing with finances of Parliament, it must come. The regulations cannot be done by another committee. When we are present as this committee, which oversees the financial management of Parliament. But the third aspect, Chairperson, is the issue of the regulations. As they said, is referred to scoff. But what is very important is that the sooner we get the executive authority and the minister and urge them that it must be done. It must be done. So that before this Parliament comes to an end next year, this thing should have been resolved. I remember, Chairperson, the regulations on this act were there on the order paper. And then at the 11th hour, they were withdrawn. I think that as this committee, we must assert our power, that we would need that. And then I'd like to agree with the researcher on the fourth issue, that the issue of the restriction of this committee vis-a-vis the Parliamentary Oversight Authority is there, is clear. And then it cannot be possible, because whatever budget you have, it is an instrument to implement a particular policy. So it means that it is not right that we are only restricted to financial management only. The issue and the direction of policy must be, we must oversee it very strong, so that at the end of the day, we have a people-centered parliament as this thing. Because one of the things coming very clear, you can see that the artifacts, the symbols of parliament, the symbols of parliament, basically a lot of them indicate the past. How do we ensure that they indicate the integrated society of South Africa? Because that one now becomes policy. So we have to hold the executive authority to account around those issues. But as I said, that the issue of the parliamentary file, although it was a disaster, but it can also be an opportunity, because as the English say that for each and every cloud, there's a silver lining. The silver lining which can happen is that we can start now ensuring that as we reconstruct parliament, we ensure that it is inclusive, it reflects the aspiration of all the people of the Republic, without destroying the history which we have. The history must be preserved so that our great-grandchildren must know where we come from, how we had to struggle for more than 350 years to ensure that we got this liberation which we are having. So I think that this report is very precise, but part of us is that by next week, Chairperson, the Secretary to Parliament and the Executive must come and account on that 180 million. Because very soon, the financial year will be winding down. That money has been allocated to Parliament. They must come and account to us what they're doing. But apart from that, because this issue of 2 billion is finances of Parliament, the first port of call which they have to go to is this committee, because it is going to deal with the finances of Parliament. Chairperson, I really appreciate the presentation which has been given to us, and then let's take decisive action in 2023 in the interest of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Maute.
Thank you, Chair. Greetings to yourself and the colleagues who are on the platform this morning. Chair, we welcome the presentation, and most importantly, a slide that deals with the main focus in the budget and annual report of Parliament. I got more energized when I saw the part that speaks about interrogating the accounting officer on the budget. Now, my question is, Chair, as this is an oversight committee of Parliament finances, what then do we do when we've got an authority that does not respond to matters that relates to finances? I'm going to give you an example. We sit in the section 194 parliamentary committee that deals with the PP. We've written a letter to the Speaker on the 2nd of December asking how much has been spent on that committee. We were very specific. How much has the evidence leader been paid to date? We did not receive any response. We wrote another letter again this week, reminding the Speaker that we have not responded to our question. So what then do we do as members of Parliament if that information is not forthcoming? And we first raised this issue, by the way, in the committee to say, how much are we spending? Because we as members of Parliament ought to know, and the public ought to know, how Parliament is spending their monies. Now, I'm bringing it here because I don't know what else to do, from writing letters to the Speaker, not having any responses from the Speaker. What can this committee then do? I'm asking this question here, and the Secretary of Parliament is here, or is supposed to be here, including the Speaker, by the way. How much has been spent by the committee since it commenced its work? How much are we paying Advocate Bauer per day? And how much has she been paid to date? Those are my questions. And I'm asking them because it is this committee that provides oversight over Parliament and all its committees. I will pause there for now, Chair. Thank you.
Member Lesoma, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and good morning to your good self, and condolences to the co-chair. And Chair, let's welcome the presentation. For me, I would say it's too late, not too late as well, because I'm not going to try to blow our own horn, but we have tried to work within the parameters of what is expected from this committee. But I think the other gray areas are caused by, as Honorable Mauto is saying, in terms of the questions they've asked to Section 194 committee in terms of its operation, and also where it's really then the questions that she's asking can be better placed, but nevertheless, she has formalized them by raising them here. I'm saying that also, Chair, that there is a Blair area that probably is one of our legacy reports, which will be part of our legacy report, is to advise strongly that the 7th Parliament shouldn't allow a straight line overlapping of responsibilities of various committees. I will cite an example, even vis-a-vis the executive, so that we do comply with the act that established this committee. The example for me, it will be the value add of the support, human support that we get from Parliament in terms of supporting committees in doing a very robust, active oversight, as it were. I just smiled when you're saying that you are welcoming the new researcher, and he corrected that he has been here since the 5th term. It shows that you will recall in some of our engagement with the acting secretary to Parliament, we're saying that we don't believe that there's value add that we get. And I think that envelope that we've been pushing now, we are seeing those results, because we are starting to appreciate, from where I'm seated, appreciating the researcher support that we get from the committee, as this committee. So I'm applauding the good work in terms of the presentation that he has raised. Secondly, Chair, I would like to make a suggestion that says that while we are engaging, but moving forward in the immediate future, if he can, together with the content advisor, develop a matrix that will say, as how he has presented it, but in a more table form, that will say that not picking up the areas that we have been doing very well, but the gray areas, and what if everything was well and
We completely lost you, Honorable Lisoma.
and also give us a better, Chair, my apology for that. I think in terms of the recommendations, Chair, because I want to talk to that, which is my third point, there is a recourse from where I'm seated. The same way we approve the departments or the EAs, if I want to be narrow, EAs, plans and budgets. Probably it's high time if committees or even ourselves were not satisfied to say we're not going to approve this budget, because the things that we would have raised in our engagement to your good self would not have been taken seriously. Because when the report has been tabled before the House, the Speaker then writes to the relevant department or the EAs to say these are the recommendations from this committee, which ordinarily, logically and legally, they are supposed also to take them into consideration when they are revising or presenting or preparing for their plans to be submitted to Parliament. That is why in our committees, we always say that also pick up the points that we have raised. How have you incorporated in your plans? And I think there is a recourse. Probably there just needs to be loud and clear, on paper, so that all of us, both parties, are aware that they must comply with those issues, because we do have a recourse. It's just that we have never use it as various committees or this committee. Chair, with that, I've made suggestions in terms of metrics, which I'm lobbying members also to agree with me. It will assist us to measure how far have we gone with those things, Chair. Thank you very much, Chair, and thanks for the opportunity once more.
You're welcome. I'll recognize Member Muletsani, Member Taiso, Moletsane, Kaisho, and Brettenberg.
Okay, thank you, Chairperson. Let me also join the colleagues to acknowledge the presentation. Chairperson, my concern is on this presentation. It's on the slide 7, where it talks about the issue of communication. I think this matter has been raised several times in the plenary sittings, whereby we experience the challenge of interpretation. So maybe one must raise it here that the committee, maybe they should invite the person who's accountable, who's in charge for communication, to come and explain whether this Department of Communication, do they have a problem of lack of manpower, or what is the problem? Because always in the plenary sittings, especially in the NCOPs, we are always facing the challenge of interpretation. So we are not, one is asking himself whether is it because they don't have enough manpower, or maybe somebody is neglecting his or her responsibility. So if the people who are in charge can be invited to this committee to come in and explain, because it is very important that we must have the interpreters in our sittings so that everyone is able to listen with the language that he prefers, he understood very well. So it makes people not to be actively involved, because sometimes they don't even understand or hear the presentation that is done. So I'll request that they should be invited to come and explain what are the challenges in that committee. Thank you, Chairperson.
Can we stick to the order, members, please?
Is that me, Chair?
Yes.
Yes, thank you very
followed by
much.
Brettenberg.
Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And I want to thank very much for the presentation that has been made by the researcher, and taking note on other critical areas which the research has raised, which of importance to this committee to apply its mind. As I was listening to the presentation, Honorable Chair, there's an area which attracted me when a reference was made as to how the posture of the committee was, is developed as far as this oversight body of the Parliament. So it was such that now it focused mainly on the matters that are, has to do only with the finance management of the Parliament. Whereas now looking at broadly, it encompasses a number of areas which were not necessarily included in its entirety as this institution or committee. So what I wanted to find out, maybe to the researcher, does that then suggest that the name of Joint Standing Committee has to be recomposed to reflect those areas, or that area which is blind, such that now, henceforth, we know now the committee should actually mean this, or we should assume that the name itself is sufficient to automatically imply those areas that are on the blind spot. Yes, I just wanted to get that clarity, Chair. Otherwise, I support what my colleague, Honorable Soma, has raised in as far as metrics is concerned.
Thank you. Member Breitenbach?
I'm assuming you're referring to me, but I'm proud to say it, not Breitenbach. Hello, Chairperson, can you hear me? Chairperson?
Is the Afrikaans version?
No, it's Brauterset is actually Norwegian.
It's the Afrikaans version of Brantese.
No, yeah, maybe, because Brauterset is Norwegian. It's got nothing to do with Afrikaans.
Okay, no, my humble apologies.
Yeah. No
Okay,
problems. I'm from the north. Okay. Sis Chair, I want to just say that, look, we obviously have a situation where today is a planning meeting, and I fully understand that. But the question I have to ask is why we did not put front and center today the issue that Honorable Khadebe raised. The most pressing issue of Parliament right now, bar any other issues, is the functioning of Parliament, surely. And the fact that the National Assembly is functioning at a third of its capacity. Working in the Good Hope Chamber is not is not ideal, as you all know. It doesn't allow all members to be there. As a result, members are now living a life of constantly on Zoom. Because if they're not speaking in the House, they're normally not in the House because they can't be in the House. And then also the most important part, Chair, is that the public have no access. The public have no access to National Assembly sittings. And that surely cannot be right, and it cannot be condoned. And so I understand that it's necessary to have planning meetings, and I'm not being critical of that. But I'm saying that at the first meeting that we've had this year, I would have thought that front and center, we would have had the speaker here, the secretary here, the chairperson of the NCOP, and said to them, right, how are we going to spend this 2 billion rand to fix Parliament? I honestly would like that to be front and center of our business, because at the moment Parliament is an elephant walking along with only 3 legs, and then that's our problem. And that, despite everything else and everything else that's in this wonderful report, that's got to be our primary focus: is how do we restore Parliament back to full working function, not only in terms of the NA sittings, but also in terms of meeting in-person committees. And too many members are becoming far too comfortable about sitting in Zoom meetings for committee meetings. And we cannot get to the real heart of the business on Zoom all the time. I agree that Zoom is a fantastic innovation and it's very, very convenient, but we have to get back to in-person. So, Chairperson, can I just ask that with the greatest urgency, we get the executive authority in front of us, the accounting officer in front of us, and say, right, what's the plan? What are we going to do to move fast to get this done? It's been 1 year. Colleagues of mine were in Egypt and Germany for an oversight trip, and they're building bridges in 3 months there, not 5 years like it takes us to build a bridge. We've really got to get our act together. We've got the money. Let's get started. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, I think you were last on my list. Unless if members would still want to raise issues, none. Okay, please lower your hand, Tim. Okay, thank you very much, members, for your observations. There are quite a number of issues that are directly to the EA, and it will not be fair for us to expect that the researcher will then provide responses to that. There were financial matters that needs accountability. Just to make an example, the expenditure of the 118 million. Maybe in the next week, we can then schedule a meeting just to get accountability on finances and spendings. We'll see how to then put it into a correct context then yeah, maybe we should agree on that. But if there are issues that maybe the researcher would want to reflect on, I will then afford him an opportunity to do so. But I think this is work in progress. Indeed, Member Khadebe is correct. This comes at the end of the term, but it will assist us then as we write our handover report. So it will then assist those that will be following or taking over from us. Researcher, I'm inviting you to make your comments.
Yes,
If there are
Chair.
no comments, please also feel free to advise.
I would like to respond to Honorable Kaiso's question. So, Honorable Kaiso, the problem here is not to amend the act or to change the name of the committee. The regulations are sufficient to provide for any action that the committee can take, but linked to the provision of the act, because the act was already saying the responsibility of the committee is to conduct oversight over financial management of Parliament. And then now, if, for example, the regulations were processed by this committee, we would have a way to say, okay, now we conduct oversight over the financial management of Parliament. And then in doing that, let us also look at the policy. We cannot leave the policy out. That's why in the end, then I said, budget is not only numbers and statistics. It is about the policy. And then we would say, no, the committee cannot just look at figures and statistics in terms of budget. It must also look at the effectiveness of the policy and the implementation of the policy. So the thing is now we need to do, if this committee could process the regulations, would be able to come up with in the regulations, because the regulations are developed by the management and then, but they are processed by the committee. But in our case now, they are processed in elsewhere by the people or by the committee that doesn't have, that doesn't understand the issues that we face, that we raise even now, because we don't present to the Standing Committee of Finance. And if it was our committee, we would say, okay, now we deal with the budget process and we'll deal with the regulations on the financial management of Parliament. So let us not leave the policy out. Let us also look, the committee also must look at the implementation of the policy and the effectiveness of the policy. That would be sufficient for this committee to have a broader function than it is now, because according to the act now, it confines it to conduct oversight over the financial management of Parliament, but not the effectiveness of the policy. I hope the Standing Committee on Finance will do that, but I doubt, because they will only make sure that they always do things according to what the act is specified, but the regulation will be clear and detailed and provide more rooms for the committee to conduct its oversight, even over the policy, because the budget funds the policy. So you need to follow the funds then and see if there's value for money for those funds when the policy was implemented. That's all. I'm done now, Chair.
Thank you very much. Cindy, can we
Yeah.
move to the next agenda item?
Yes, Chairperson. I'm just finding it quickly. members. I thought just to respond to the questions about the question about the restoration progress in the restoration efforts. The committee has scheduled a follow-up meeting with DPWI and Parliament for next week. So I'm told that we will receive the updated presentations in the course of today, because they've made some amendments to the presentations they submitted earlier this morning. Now, Chairperson, in this presentation, I'm just going to summarize, give an overview of some of the committee's recommendations and propose some matters that we can pursue in 2023. There's part 2 of the presentation will deal with Parliament's implementation plan and what is required of the Joint Standing Committee in terms of the implementation of that plan. And finally, we will request the committee to take a few decisions as far as approving some of the items so that we can draft a proposed 2023 plan that we will amend as we go along through the year. So, between 2019 and 2022, the committee has made over 100 recommendations that have been tabled in the National Assembly and in the NCOP in our committee reports. Many of our recommendations are repeated with each new report because implementation is slow, and one assumes that it's for reasons such as the leadership instability within the administration, the slow implementation of the organizational realignment project, and slow progress as far as developing regulations, and then the obvious budgetary constraints. Although some of our recommendations are adopted by the NA and the NCOP, although some of them have been responded to by the EA, the vast majority do not receive formal response. I think part of the challenge could also be that while the NCOP is very quick to adopt our recommendations and our reports, it's much slower on the NA side. So programming should probably look at maybe bringing those two, aligning the processing of our reports, because they are joint reports, so that it's easier for the EA to respond to them. And so in the red parts of this presentation, I'm giving some recommendations the committee can consider, and we should be, in terms of the overview, the committee could consider requesting the administration or the executive authority to provide responses or recent developments related to our past recommendations, and should consider including briefings and progress reports in our program for 2023. In the next part of the presentation, I'll be highlighting the key recommendations, the most important ones that members have consistently highlighted. The first has to do with the filling of critical vacancies. This process has been very slow. To date, the most important senior management positions that are left vacant are that of the CFO and the head of Parliamentary Protection Services. They've been vacant now for several years. The committee should consider receiving quarterly reports as part of our quarterly report briefings, quarterly updates on the filling of these vacancies, and also a briefing on challenges related to Parliament's recruitment processes, the reasons for why vacancies are filled so slowly. As far as the organizational realignment project, the secretary reported last year that he was acquainting himself with the institution and that he would brief the committee on the realignment project once he's familiarized himself with it. And we should consider scheduling this briefing with the SDP and then afterwards receiving quarterly progress reports. We have touched on the compliance with the FMP PLA, specifically the regulations. Again, here we should consider a briefing by the SDP and quarterly progress reports. The committee could also consider, since the Standing Committee on Finance is processing the regulations, we may consider requesting to be invited to those meetings, since we haven't been invited. On public participation, the committee consistently raises concerns or makes recommendations to ensure greater public participation and more meaningful participation. And although there's been an increase in the size of public hearings, it is not clear whether Parliament has done an analysis of the impact of the increase in the size. There's been meaningful, apart from the numbers, meaningful increase in the extent to which the public can participate. We have also received various reports from the Parliamentary Communication Service to increase public awareness of the business of Parliament. However, concerns regarding the parliamentary channel remain, and also that if the public want to access Parliament, it can only be via the to watch broadcasts from outside of Parliament, Cape Town. If they're not attending Parliament, they can only do so via the DSTV channel. Parliament did indicate that they were negotiating with ICASA around having its own channel, but we've not been given an update. So this is also something the committee can consider receiving a briefing on public participation efforts and the impact of recent developments, as well as progress made in the establishing of the free channel. In respect of the OISD, the Office on Institutions Supporting Democracy, to ensure that the OISD operates optimally, the committee in the past recommended that the institution should revisit the recommendations made by the Ad Hoc Committee on the Review of Chapter 9 and Associated Institutions, with a view of implementing them. For we have not had any feedback on this, and so the committee can consider briefing by the OISD on this matter. The Parliamentary Budget Office. The Parliamentary Budget Office, since I think last year or the year before, has been tabling its business plan and budget estimates. But as far as I know, the plan and estimates have not been referred to a oversight committee for processing. The committee should consider briefing by the PBO on its business plan and budget, because it is money that they get allocated and that they must account for, as well as quarterly reports that they should be submitted for scrutiny. Then in terms of the performance management system, the client satisfaction surveys, the Secretary to Parliament towards the end of last year indicated that he was applying his mind to reviewing the manner in which performance is managed. And so the committee could consider briefing by the STP and the Strategic Governance and Management Division, and then followed by quarterly reports for progress. The last two recommendations have to do with the parliamentary medical scheme with PARMED and the budgetary constraints. So the long-standing challenge around PARMED and its impact on the Parliament's baseline budget. There was a proposal, the committee was informed in the past, there was a proposal that the financial responsibilities in terms of the post-retirement medical aid benefits for current and former members of Parliament and provincial legislatures should be shared between Parliament and the provincial legislatures, but we've not had a progress report on that. And we have scheduled a briefing on this for the 24th of March. The committee should consider receiving quarterly updates on the progress made by the Treasury Advice Office on developing a proposed solution, because we were told that National Treasury has advised Parliament to come up with an alternative vehicle. Then on the budgetary constraints, the relevant authority should agree to a budget process that allows Parliament to be funded in a manner that recognises its status and constitutional obligations. The committee has recommended this in practically all of its reports. In addition, the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture, corruption, and fraud in the public sector, including organs of state, better known as the Zondo Commission, has also identified Parliament's budgetary constraints as an impediment to it meeting its constitutional obligation of performing oversight and holding the executive account. Part 2 of this presentation will deal with a proposal in terms of the Zondo recommendations. Moving on to part 2 then, Chair and members. The Zondo Commission was established in July 2018, and its reports its report was published in several volumes between March and October last year. The report includes observations and recommendations relating to Parliament's capacity to meet its constitutional obligations. And on 31 January this year, the Speaker tabled Parliament's implementation plan to give effect to those recommendations. Amongst others, the Zondo Commission recommended that Parliament should ensure that adequate funds are allocated to enable effective parliamentary oversight. In the implementation plan, Parliament indicates that it has consistently made submissions for more funds to the Treasury and to the Minister of Finance to improve the execution of its core mandates. Parliament has, for example, requested more funding in order to resource all parliamentary committees, and specifically NCOP committees, because they require more resources because of the clustering of portfolios. Parliament has also indicated that it has designated the responsibility for ensuring the implementation of this recommendation to the Executive Authority, the Accounting Officer, and to this committee. So Parliament has identified the Joint Standing Committee as the committee to monitor and report on the engagements between Treasury and Parliament, aimed at determining the most appropriate way to give effect to the Commission's recommendations. The parliamentary committees that have been identified to monitor and report progress made in the implementation of the Zondo Commission's recommendations are required to develop an action plan or action plans to report to the House chairpersons for committees in the NA and the NCOP on a quarterly basis. So for our committee, the Secretariat has proposed the following action plan. So our plan comprises, or proposed plan comprises, actions including monthly written updates by the Executive Authority or the Accounting Officer, engagements with Parliament's Executive Authority and the Minister of Finance, quarterly updates by the Executive Authority that can coincide with our quarterly report briefings, and the submission of the Joint Standing Committee's quarterly updates to the relevant House chairpersons. The actions proposed in the plan are just proposals, and they're not fixed, so that they can amend it so that they can be amended as the committee receives its updates throughout the year. So the plan is the same one that we shared. So this presentation is the same as what we submitted on Monday with members, but in written format. So this is the proposal that is contained in that document as well. So our first meeting between the Minister of Finance and the Treasury and Parliament, as well as the Parliament Board Chair, was the Deputy Speaker, scheduled for the 24th of March. But to assist us in that meeting, we are proposing that Parliament should submit, in preparation for that meeting, the budget plan that they've been negotiating, that they've been using in their negotiations, because that will help us when we meet with them on the 16th of March, and we're proposing that that happens as soon as possible. So that is the meeting of the 24th. And then we will submit our first quarterly report to the relevant chairs on the 27th of March. And then the rest of the plan is just as a schedule for receiving the progress reports, the quarterly reports, and for the submission of the reports to the NCOP and the NHA. So that's the presentation, Chair. And then the decisions that we require to be taken by the Joint Standing Committee is to approve or amend the items that we raised in the presentation, to approve the action plan or to amend the action plan so that we can incorporate everything in the draft annual plan that we're going to develop to. And then from the previous discussion, I have noted that the committee wants us to develop a matrix for tracking the impact of the Joint Standing Committee's recommendations, the briefing on the urgent briefing around the restoration that has already been scheduled. It was scheduled last year, and we're receiving the briefing next week. the engagement with the Minister of Finance is scheduled for the 24th of March. And Mr. Molatsane's concern, I would like to propose that the concern around language services, that we can perhaps request the management, because they will be at our meeting next week, to include a report on this in their quarterly update. Chair, that's it from me. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Cindy. We welcome the report. Members, comments? I see Member Khadebe, Member Lesuma, and Member Tim.
No, thank you, Chairperson. I also appreciate the report from Cindy. But what I want to emphasize is that when you look on the 24th, it is the week where we'll be celebrating the Human Rights Day as the South Africans on the 21st. So I suggest that meeting, which has been scheduled for the 24th, it must be adjusted accordingly, but we cannot deal on the date here. Let us give it to the capable of the co-chairpersons to decide on the date when that, because it's very important. It's important that all the stakeholders must be in. But during that, we'll be off the field, dealing with the issue of human rights, and then the party programs are there for that week. So I suggest that date, we must not stick to it. What we can do is that let us leave it to the capable hands of the co-chairpersons and deal with that. And then after all, the other issues I agree. Either we agree with the recommendations which are coming that we have to attend these issues, we must attend in 2023. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Member Lesoma.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. And let me also occur Honorable Khatebe's words to say we welcome the year plan, our ultimate year plan with specific days. Let's accept it as a plan in progress. As we move along, if there are valid reasons to shift the dates, we'll do that or through the co-chairs advising us. Secondly, Chair, the point that Honorable Tim has raised, I think is covered in the program. And I think also the meeting with the PPO also will assist in that regard. But in so doing, Chair, I will suggest that in the same day when we'll be dealing with that report through the EA, we invite Auditor General so that also she can assist in terms of what is in place for in her office in terms of the timeline auditing as we move along. I heard in the media, but subject to verification by your good self to the EA Chair, that they are going to have a memorandum of understanding, a tripartite alliance, like sort of a thing with the Parliament, Public Works, and also the implementation agency for restoration or building of Parliament, rebuilding of Parliament, as it were. Also, we must find a way how do we then oversight as the milestone gets implemented on that project. I'll call it a project, Chair. The last one, Chair, okay, I've just missed it now, I've forgotten. But nevertheless, I'm endorsing that and I'm happy the way it's being said. And probably, Chair, in one of our meetings when we engage with the EAs, we must also get an understanding of the operations of the chairs of chairs in terms of supporting issues that we might raise here, which is within our scope, that how we intend to implement them or better understand his working before we say that he's not doing what he's supposed to do, because we must have a clear working relationship with that office in supporting the Parliament workings as supposed to be. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Tim. Member team? Are you still in the platform?
Yes,
Okay.
Ms. Mabe.
Yes.
Mr. Bratter says still yes. I don't know if maybe he's experiencing difficulties or has stepped away, perhaps.
Okay, it's fine. Let's move on. I hope you've noted what
Yes,
members have raised. Yes, it's work in progress, members. Of course, the program will continue to change as and when the year unfolds. Also, taking note that we're on the eve of the elections, so there's going to be a lot of changes. All right, thank you very much, Cindy. Can we then move to the next agenda item?
Yes, Chairperson, the next item will be the consideration of our 2 reports, but we won't be able to adopt them because we don't have a quorum.
Okay. Members, can I get suggestions? My first proposal will be that we go through them, we note them, and as and when an opportunity presents itself where we have a quorum, we just simply adopt. My second proposal will be that we then defer them to a meeting where we will be able to then get a quorum. Those are my 2 proposals. Can we get?
Chair,
Yes, Ma'am Maude?
yeah, I think I want to go with your second suggestion. And the reason is
Okay.
that if we go through it now, we'll still need to go through it when we've got a full complement, because you can't just adopt something that you have not gone through it in the meeting. So my proposal is that let's defer it to the next meeting so that we get all members here, and then we go through it all together, and then we adopt or make changes or whatever the case may be. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. The item has been deferred to a meeting where we will have a full complement of members. Next, Cindy.
We only had those 3 items left to adopt, Chairperson.
Okay, thank you very much. With an understanding that in the next coming week, we will then have EAs to present on the expenditures. I'm not sure if it will also cover the letter that Member Mautwe said she wrote to the Speaker about finances. If not, please talk to her so that we can also find a way of putting that in the agenda. So it's 2 agenda items, if I'm correct, for next week. It will be progress on the restoration of Parliament and the expenditures. Is that in order, members?
Chair, if I may, because I could see that we need to shout. Chair, my approach to do this, I totally agree with you. Let's get confirmation from Honorable Maute that as she presented the issue here of section 194 in terms of its expenditure. Obviously, in terms of process of how you handle the matters, she's presenting it in this committee formally, and then the Speaker will be advised that that letter has been tabled here, although it was written to her, while she's going to respond to Honorable Maute, but we would, as this committee, expect her or request her to give us a presentation in that regard, so that we become clean, systematical in terms of how we process issues, because we don't want to be accused that we are told about the letter that we have never received, but now we're entertaining the issue, so that we just separate the gray areas that might be intentionally caused. Thanks, Chair, but I totally agree. Thanks.
Noted.
Chair,
Yes, Umpili.
yes. So remember, Lisuma was her network was breaking. I don't know if it's her or mine, but if she's saying the letters, I can forward the letters to you, Chair, or the secretary of this committee. Both the letter of the secretary. I could not hear clearly what she was saying, but if she was talking about the letters, I can make them available.
Forward the letters to Cindy, and then we'll see how to then incorporate your letters to the agenda for the coming
Thank
week.
you, Chair. We'll do so.
All right.
Thank you, Chair. We'll do so.
Can we leave it at that, members? I see there's a hand, unless if it's an old hand, it's of Mpilo, it's an old hand. Yeah, just send the letter, then we'll find a way of incorporating it. Let me also send our deepest condolences to the co-chairperson's family. And if the members will be able to attend the funeral, we'll really appreciate. She has lost a brother. And that's the reason why she was not a part of this meeting. Let us agree that then next week, 8 o'clock, hopefully that it will also not take long. From 8 to 10, I think it is fair. Members, the meeting is officially adjourned. We'll meet next week.
Sorry, Chairperson. Sorry,
Yes,
Chairperson.
Member Tim.
Chairperson, I don't know how the other members feel, but I just wanted to raise this sometime during the course of the meeting. Is there any opportunity that we can make the meetings at 8:30 or 9 o'clock? I'll tell you why, Chairperson. I normally fly back to my constituency at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, and I just land at 8 o'clock. And if there was just some sort of space just to make sure I log on time. I don't know how the other members feel about a 9 o'clock meeting or even 8:30. I don't know if possible, because I see obviously this is now the time slot we're going to try and occupy, which I have no problem with. I just wonder if how members feel about if we just move it back half an hour or to 9 o'clock. If I can just put that on the table, Chair, before we close. I'm sorry about that.
We'll give you 30 minutes allowance so that you can settle. How is that?
Now, Chairperson, if the majority agrees that that's okay, then I'll be very grateful. But
Yeah, on behalf of the majority, we are giving you 30 minutes. If
Agreed,
that's okay for you to settle.
okay,
So
Chairperson, I'm very grateful for your indulgence. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, because Friday, for all of us, it becomes a very short day because we've just came back from Cape Town and we have a lot of programs that maybe we want to attend to. So keeping long meetings on Friday will also not be effective for us. We are able to get many members attending, most members attending, because we've shifted from 12 to morning. But remember, if we were on the 12 o'clock schedule, it was not possible because members had to attend to a lot of things. So 8:30 to maybe 10:30, it will be fine. Members, enjoy your weekend.
Thank you, Chairperson.